You know the feeling of a day that starts like every other day, and then something small happens and the whole thing shifts. Not a crisis, just a moment where you notice something you'd been not noticing for a long time. Tonight has that structure. So earlier today, maybe this morning, maybe an hour ago, you picked up your phone for no real reason, not a notification. Just your hand went there, and you found yourself thinking about someone. Not seriously thinking. They just showed up, between two things, while you were doing something else completely, and they didn't leave right away. That's not a coincidence. Here's what's been happening underneath everything for the last 2 days. Venus has been building towards something. It's been in Taurus since late March, its own sign, the one it actually belongs in. And when a planet is in its home sign, it doesn't work harder. It works cleaner, more direct. What that's meant for the past 25 days is simple. The quality of love in the air has been physical, specific, close, not romantic in the poetic sense, more like, I want to be in the same room as you. I want proximity, something real, not a concept. That's been running in the background since late March. Even if you haven't consciously felt it, it's been building, like a charge looking for somewhere to go. But then the last week came in heavy. If you felt pressure recently, decision pressure, that feeling of too many things requiring a clear answer all at once, that wasn't just your life being difficult. That was 3 planets stacking on top of each other in the same degree. That combination does one thing. It compresses everything into structure and action. Things you can't leave vague anymore. And while that was happening, your heart basically went offline. Not gone, just set aside. Like you put something on a shelf because you needed both hands free. The thing is, Venus didn't stop building while all that was going on. She kept accumulating. And now that pressure has lifted, the list is shorter, your head is less full. What's sitting on that shelf is louder than you expected. Now, here's the part I want you to sit with. Most people carry a picture of what their love life looks like. Nobody writes it down, but it's there. A low-grade assumption running in the background. This is how it goes. This is what it looks like. This is probably how it'll keep looking. You didn't decide that picture. It just formed. Through what happened, through what didn't, through what you got used to expecting. And at some point you stopped questioning it, not because you agreed with it exactly, but because it became the floor. Just the way things are. Tonight doesn't attack that picture, it just shows you it's there. Like someone turning on a light in a room you'd been navigating in the dark so long you forgot it was dark. The floor is still the floor, but now you can see what's actually on it. That person who showed up in your head today? That pull toward something you haven't let yourself look at directly? That moment where you almost wrote something to someone and then didn't? Those aren't random. Tonight, in a window that opens and closes before midnight, 2 exact aspects happen within 30 minutes of each other. Venus meets Uranus at the very last degree before both of them move on, and the moon in Leo reaches its first quarter, squaring the sun. 2 different clocks hitting the same hour from different directions. What arrives tonight doesn't knock. It just appears, already inside the perimeter. A person, a thought, a direction you hadn't mapped. The assumption breaks first. Then you see what was behind it. So let's go back a little. Because what you're feeling right now didn't start today. Late March. Venus moves into Taurus, its own sign. And when a planet is in its home sign, it doesn't strain. It just does exactly what it does, cleanly, without interference. What that meant for the last 25 days is this. The quality of love that's been available has been physical, specific. The kind where you actually want to be in the same space as someone, where proximity matters more than words, where you notice whether someone smells familiar or whether their voice does something to the room. That's been the background frequency this whole time. Even if you didn't track it consciously, it was laying down layers, like sediment, quiet and constant. And then the last week hit. If you felt compressed recently, like everything required a decision and none of it could wait, that wasn't just circumstance. Mercury, Mars, and Saturn all landed in the same degree within a day of each other. That combination does one specific thing. It pulls all available attention into structure, action, and consequences. Things that need handling, things you can't leave open. And your heart, quietly, without drama, went on hold, not off, just set aside. You needed both hands for other things. But here's what people don't think about. Venus didn't pause while that was happening. She kept building, kept accumulating that Taurus quality, the slow, grounded physical pull, the entire time you were busy handling everything else. So now that pressure is lifted. The list is shorter. Your head has a little more room, and what you put on the shelf turns out to be heavier than you remembered. That's not a metaphor. That's what actually happens when a slow-building Venus transit gets interrupted and then released. The delay didn't weaken anything, it concentrated it. There's one more thread, and it matters. About 6 days ago, April 17th, there was a new moon sitting directly next to Chiron. Chiron is the oldest wound in the chart, the one you've learned to work around, the one you don't touch directly because you got good at not touching it. That new moon didn't heal it. It just opened the room. Specifically, it opened the part of you that wants to be seen by someone. Not impressed, not evaluated, just actually seen. That quiet thing you don't usually say out loud. And then, immediately after, the Mercury-Mars-Saturn pressure came in and swept you back into functional mode, back into decisions and tasks and being the person who handles things. But that opening didn't close. It's been sitting there under the whole week, under the task list, under the decisions, under everything you managed competently while feeling slightly more tender than usual and not saying so. Tonight, Venus meets Uranus, and that meeting isn't diffuse. It doesn't spread energy out in all directions. It gives everything that's been accumulating a specific exit point, a specific shape, the 25 days of Taurus quality, the week of pressure that pushed the heart to the side, the crack that opened near Chiron and never quite sealed. All of it has somewhere to land now, and the place it lands is precise. One specific degree, one specific hour, a window between when the conjunction becomes exact and when Venus changes signs entirely. Roughly 2 hours where all of that concentrated charge exists at maximum pressure before the quality shifts into something lighter and more verbal and less direct. What happens in that window? A message you send, a conversation you don't deflect, a moment where you stay present instead of going somewhere easier in your head, carries the full weight of everything that built up to it. The delay made tonight matter more than it would have otherwise. That's not consolation. That's the actual mechanics of what's been happening since late March. Okay, so here's where it gets specific. Tonight, not this week, not sometime soon. Tonight, Venus and Uranus meet at 29 degrees and 54 minutes of Taurus. That number matters more than it might sound. 29 degrees is the last degree of any sign, the very end point. And one specific degree, one specific hour, a window between when the conjunction becomes exact and when Venus changes signs entirely. Roughly 2 hours where all of that concentrated charge exists at maximum pressure before the quality shifts into something lighter and more verbal and less direct. What happens in that window? A message you send, a conversation you don't deflect, a moment where you stay present instead of going somewhere easier in your head, carries the full weight of everything that built up to it. The delay made tonight matter more than it would have otherwise. That's not consolation. That's the actual mechanics of what's been happening since late March. Okay, so here's where it gets specific. Tonight, not this week, not sometime soon. Tonight, Venus and Uranus meet at 29 degrees and 54 minutes of Taurus. That number matters more than it might sound. 29 degrees is the last degree of any sign, the very end point. And there's something particular that happens at the final degree. It's not a weakening. It's actually the opposite. All the energy that sign has been carrying gets pulled into one concentrated point, like the last squeeze of something that's been building pressure the whole time. Venus at 29, Taurus means everything that sign had to offer in terms of love, the physical, the specific, the close and grounded, lands right here, in one pulse, tonight. And Uranus is what releases it. Now, here's the part that I actually want you to sit with for a second. Uranus entered Taurus in May 2018. That's 7 years. 7 years of this planet slowly moving through the sign that governs what you value, what you find beautiful, what you want to hold on to. 7 years of quiet transformation in those areas. Not loud, not dramatic, just steady and underneath everything. And in 2 days, Uranus leaves Taurus and moves into Gemini, for good. It won't come back to Taurus until 2074. So tonight is the final meeting between Venus and Uranus, while Uranus is still in this sign. The last time these two planets speak to each other in the language of physical attraction, of what your body actually responds to, of what feels like home versus what just feels like habit. That conversation ends tonight. If you're watching this video, this is the last time in your life this happens. And then there's the actual timing. Venus conjunct Uranus becomes exact at 10 p.m. Eastern. 2 hours later, just after midnight, Venus moves into Gemini. That's the window, from 10 p.m. to just past midnight Eastern. For Central Europe, that's roughly 4 a.m. to just after 6 a.m. In those 2 hours, something specific exists that doesn't exist before and won't exist after. You have the full concentrated Taurus quality of Venus, the electric discharge of Uranus, and Gemini, lighter, more mental, more verbal, hasn't arrived yet. It's not before and it's not after. It's the line itself, the threshold with no width. And right in the middle of that, 10:31 p.m. Eastern, the moon reaches its first quarter in Leo. 31 minutes after Venus and Uranus become exact. 3 things. 1 2-hour window. Here's what that actually feels like from the inside. Not fireworks, not a scene from a film. Something smaller than that and more specific. A message lands and your reaction surprises you. You look at someone, not a stranger, someone already in your life, and something in your chest does something it hasn't done in a while. Or a thought comes in clean and clear about a direction you've been pretending you don't want. And it doesn't feel like a new thought. It feels like a thought you've been having quietly for a long time that just got loud enough to hear. That's the window. And here's the thing about the 29th degree specifically. It doesn't just create a moment. It creates a before and after. Because when that concentrated pulse releases, the picture you've been carrying about your love life, the one you didn't consciously choose, the one that just became the floor, develops a crack in it. Not a fracture, just a crack. But once that crack is there, you can't fully unsee it. You know the picture is a picture now. You know it's not just reality. And something that has less power than before is something you move differently around. That's what tonight actually is. Not an event that happens to you. A moment where the lens shifts and you start seeing with slightly different eyes. Most people hear Venus conjunct Uranus and think, okay, unexpected person incoming. Something new arrives from outside. A surprise, a stranger, a plot twist. And sometimes that's how it shows up. Sometimes it is a person. But that's not what Uranus does first. What Uranus does first is take something off, not add something, remove something. Specifically, it removes a filter you forgot you were wearing. Here's what I mean. At some point, you didn't sit down and decide this, it just formed. You built a picture of what you're attracted to, your type, the kind of person you take seriously, the kind of dynamic that feels right versus the kind that feels wrong. And you've been running that filter automatically ever since. Someone walks into a room and you sort them in about 2 seconds. Yes, no, not for me, maybe. Faster than thought. That filter isn't irrational. It got built from experience, from what worked, what hurt, what felt safe, what you learned to avoid. It made sense when it formed. But Uranus has been in Taurus for 7 years. 7 years of slowly, quietly reshaping what you actually value. What actually attracts you at the level of the body, not the idea, not the story, the actual body. And that process is finishing tonight at the very last degree. Which means the filter you've been running might be 7 years out of date. The sign that this is happening is specific, and you might have already felt it today. Someone who wouldn't have registered before suddenly does. Not necessarily a stranger. Could be someone you've known for a while. Someone you filed away a long time ago under not that kind of person and never reopened the file on. They say something, or they just appear in your line of sight, and something in you responds. And your first thought is actually, that's weird, that's not my type. That thought, that exact phrase, that's not my type. That's the filter talking. That's the old picture defending itself. Uranus at 29 degrees doesn't argue with it. It just makes it feel a little hollow. Like a line you've repeated so many times you stop checking whether it's still true. Or it goes the other direction. Someone who always seemed like the right fit, the kind of person you always thought you should want, suddenly feels a little flat, a little too known. Like you can already see exactly how that story goes before it starts, and something in you is tired of that story. That's also the filter shifting. Not because that person is wrong, because what you actually need has changed, and your body registered that before your head did. Think about who you were in 2018, what you wanted then, what felt exciting, what felt like love, what felt worth risking something for. Some of that is probably still true, but some of it, if you're honest, belonged to a version of you that existed before everything that's happened since, before the things that changed you, before the years that quietly rearranged what matters. You changed, your values shifted, what you find real and worth holding on to, that moved. Gradually, without announcements, and the filter didn't always update in real time. Tonight, it catches up. What that looks like in your actual evening is small. It's not a revelation, there's no music. It's more like you respond to someone differently than you normally would. You notice you're not backing away from something you usually back away from. Or a pull shows up, and instead of immediately filing it under not realistic or not my type, you just let it sit there for a second without dismissing it. That pause, that slight gap before the automatic response kicks in. That's it. That's the filter coming off. And once it's off, even slightly, even just at the edges, the whole landscape looks a little different. Not just this person or that person, what you're actually open to, what you've actually been wanting, what you've been calling not realistic, that maybe was just not what I used to want. The moon adds its own layer to all of this tonight, a different kind of question, less about what you see and more about what you're willing to do with it. So while all of that is happening, while the filter is coming off, while the old picture is showing its cracks, there's a second thing happening tonight. At 10:31 p.m. Eastern, 31 minutes after Venus and Uranus become exact, the moon hits its first quarter in Leo. Most content about this week treats that like background information, like a footnote. But this isn't a footnote. This is a second voice in the same room saying something different, and the two of them together are saying something you actually need to hear. First quarter means this. 6 days ago, there was a new moon sitting right next to Chiron. Chiron is the oldest tender spot in the chart, the thing you've learned to work around without touching directly. And that new moon didn't fix it. It just opened the door to it. Specifically, it opened the part of you that wants to be seen by someone. Not evaluated, not impressed, just actually seen. That quiet thing most people don't say out loud because it feels like too much to admit. First quarter is when whatever opened on that new moon meets its first real test. Not a crisis, more like a fork. You opened something. Now, what are you going to do with it? Are you going to let it matter, or are you going to fold it back up and put it away again? The moon is asking that tonight. In Leo, which is specific. Leo in the context of love isn't about being dramatic or needing an audience. I know it gets read that way. But what Leo actually is, at the heart of it, is the sign that refuses to keep the good stuff at a distance. The sign that wants to be in the room, not managing things from behind glass. The part of you that wants something to actually matter instead of keeping it safely theoretical. Leo is quiet courage, not standing on a stage. More like, I'm going to let this be real. I'm going to stop treating this like it probably won't work out anyway. And tonight, the moon in Leo is squaring the sun in Taurus. That square is friction. Taurus pulls toward what's stable, what's already decided, what's comfortable and known. The existing picture. The, I'll think about this later. Leo pulls the opposite way, toward what's alive, what has a pulse, what actually means something right now. You feel that friction as hesitation, as almost. That moment tonight where you get close to doing something and then stop. Where you almost send a message and put the phone down instead. Where there's a second in a conversation where you could say the real thing and you go slightly around it. Where you feel a pull and immediately start building the case for why it's probably nothing. That's Taurus pulling you back to safe, Back to the known picture, and the moon in Leo is the part of you that already knows safe isn't what you want right now. It doesn't argue, it doesn't push, it just sits there with that quiet certainty and waits to see what you do. There's a thread that runs through this whole week, and it's worth saying out loud. 6 days ago, a crack opened in something you'd kept closed for a while, the desire to be seen. Then pressure came in immediately and pushed you into functional mode, and you set it aside. Venus spent 25 days building something physical and specific and grounded. And now tonight, in a 30-minute window, Uranus removes the filter and the moon in Leo asks one question. Not dramatically, just clearly. Are you going to let this count, or are you going to wake up tomorrow having filed tonight under probably nothing and move on as if the picture hasn't shifted? That feeling you have right now, that low-level pull towards something you haven't fully let yourself want, that's the knock. Leo doesn't repeat it. It says it once, clearly, and then it's on you. The window is specific. It opens tonight and it closes before morning. What you do inside it, even something small, even one real moment instead of a managed one, carries the full weight of everything that's been building since late March. So here's the window. Tonight from 10 p.m. Eastern, when Venus and Uranus become exact, to just past midnight, when Venus moves into Gemini. 2 hours. That's it. For Central Europe, that's the early morning hours, around 4 to 6 a.m. I know, but the mechanics don't care about convenience. After midnight, Venus is in Gemini, which is lighter, more verbal, more social, more spread out. Good for conversations, good for new connections, good for words. But not this. Not the specific concentrated physical directness that's been building for 25 days. That quality exists in this window, and then it shifts. Not gone, just different. Less weighted, less pointed. What doesn't happen tonight doesn't disappear, but it moves into a different container, and that container doesn't hold it the same way. So the protocol here is not complicated. One action, not a plan, not a conversation about where things are going, not a list of what needs to change. One real thing inside the window. A message you actually send instead of drafting and deleting. A moment where you stay in the room instead of going somewhere easier in your head. Something you say out loud that you've been saying only to yourself. One small thing that comes from the actual pull, not from logic, not from what makes sense on paper, from what's real. Uranus doesn't ask for grand gestures. It asks for genuine ones. Even a small move that comes from a real place weighs more tonight than a big plan that comes from your head. Something you were carrying without knowing it, the low-grade certainty that your love life had already taken its final shape, got lighter tonight. Not gone. Lighter. That's enough to change how you move through the next few days. The noise around what you actually want is quieter now. Less justification, less explaining it away. What was background, a person, a pull, a direction, is now foreground. That happened while you were watching this video. What comes next this week moves fast and structurally. The landscape itself changes, not just the weather. What you're open to right now matters more than it will in a month. Stay close.